Hi, Sasha. Welcome to Now Next Later for June 16th. How are you?
I'm well, how are you, Jer?
Great, thanks. I just approved our first AI note taker in the attendee list.
Hmm.
I know. So I don't know. I think it might be Mike Yu from last week. So let's
Okay.
move that. And as always, I give a chance for the waiting room to come into the show. Obviously, we're recording and we post all of these to YouTube. Normally, we'd be introducing a guest at this time. What we thought we would do today, since it is our show, is take a turn every now and then to talk to each other about hot topics and things that are going on. And so normally we dive into that uh, guest's business or expertise. And today, one of the things that Sasha and I have been doing is talking to a lot of industry folks over the last few weeks between MBA events, Housing Wire events, and some of the different specific collaborative or lender-facing summits or lender-hosted summits. We figured what would be great today is to go through who are you talking to, what are you hearing, specifically, what can we expect? And I wanted to set it up as sort of like next couple of weeks, rest of the year. And then beyond that, I don't think we want to speculate too much, right? Like, I think it's kind of, um, especially during the summer, I wonder what this market will look like. And so we can talk a little bit about that. But today, thank you for joining. As always, we'll be trying to get guests out to you before Monday morning to let you know who's going to be on the show. And we'll do that for the next couple weeks. We are also very interested in keeping this show going. So if you are a sponsor in tech company world, you want to talk to lenders, capital markets, please reach out to us because we want to do some creative shows and we want to do some creative shows with our sponsors. We've had some great sponsors where we did some creative stuff. And so our format today is also an invitation to say we like to mess with the format when we can, especially if it's good for our sponsors and get at those difficult topics. We have 30 minutes, now 27 minutes. I see that you are in your Zactus home team colors, it looks like. Is that what I see there?
I am.
I've been really
Oh,
enjoying the sneaker
trying to
game.
sport the purple. You want to hear a funny story just to kick us off? So purple's my least favorite color. And I literally had zero things in my closet that were purple when I first started the job, and now my closet is overridden with purple. So I've had to learn to embrace it.
That tends to happen. I think it shows that, when you buy in all the way. It's like, listen, I'm
Absolutely.
in. That's right. I'm part of the team. I feel
Yeah,
that's
it's more
actually
fun that way. Our,
this
our
isn't a
shoes are literally becoming a hit. Like for those out there that are looking for new marketing ideas, like go for the shoes, man. I mean, it has been the greatest noisemaker in all history. It's been so
I
much
couldn't
fun.
agree more. For those on the call that may not be familiar with what we're talking about, Sasha's approach to panels, public speaking, and special guests, VIPs, is to give them the choice of Converse, Adidas, or Nike and get their Zactus color kicks. And sometimes socks I've seen some socks in the
Mhm.
mix as well. And so definitely when people are on stage, a lot of the times you're staring at their feet relative to the height of the stage in many of the venues we all know, we're all familiar with. So it's nice
Oh,
to be able to stare at something and go, oh yeah, just another way to reinforce the brand.
yeah.
Well, I had a couple of different things I wanted to go through. Rocket, Cooper, and Redfin were on stage at Housing Wire. We want to talk about Housing Wire, and we also want to talk about some of the other consolidation and tech trends. But we are on Zactus just now from the shoe game. So I don't know, is there a way we could maybe start with that? Zactus, credit verification and validation provider across a variety of the services that we've been talking about on this show, data management, analytics, around pipeline management, customer relationship, customer experience, targeting leads and customers, conversion. But one of the things that came up that I wanted to ask you about, it actually came up on stage from the MBA's executive director, Bob Broekschmidt, CEO Bob Broekschmidt, was this trigger lead roller coaster. And I think roller coaster was your terminology for it.
Yeah.
Can you give us
Yep.
a quick sense of where that is, what you heard, what it means or should mean to the audience?
Yeah, you probably heard more than I did. So full transparency, I was running around doing so many things at the event for our company that I didn't have the opportunity to sit in as many sessions as I would have liked to. So you're probably going to have to give the Bob update because I missed his session, unfortunately. But I do think, the talk of trigger leads and bills around it have been I literally use the word roller coaster because it feels like it's been up, down everywhere. Like I can't follow it
Yeah.
half the time. And I've, if I turn away from the news for 2 seconds and I turn back around, it seems like it's gone in a completely different direction. And, our panel this year was focused on adapting to that uncertainty. And I think you started off the call by saying, let's not look too far ahead. And I think that's right because, again, every time we turn, something seems to shift. Now, that being said, I think people have been sitting, in the either front row or cheap seats, waiting to see, like, is legislation really going to move on trigger leads? And I would say most people thought at the beginning of the year, like, kind of split 50-50, right? Maybe it
Yeah.
would, but not in the form that it was in. And others were like dead in the water, right? Because of the administration change. And
Hmm.
then, we saw a little bit of movement and then pull back again. And then now all of a sudden, it's like taken on a new life and it looks like it's making forward progress. And here we are, I think likely to see at least some level of a change here on legislation.
Yeah, I want to dig into this because I have had the same experience trying to track the MBA's position and trying to track this issue. So part of me says, okay, I understand the vast majority of lenders and servicers who have to
Mhm.
deal with the onslaught of phone calls from these rapid response call systems that can ping a number all the time, essentially, until they get somebody to answer as soon as they have an indicator from that lead source, that trigger lead source that they're buying from. Just common sense tells you it's pretty annoying. And if you've ever experienced it as a consumer, you're like, oh, this sucks. And I could even see it being painful enough that you might reach out to your public official and say, is this allowed? I actually could see that. It makes sense to me. At the same time, you and I both know lenders don't spend money on stuff that doesn't work. Lead gen doesn't spend money on stuff that doesn't work, right? It has to work to some degree. Now, you and I complain often that we're stuck in the old ways of what works and we're trying to bring in people to the new ways. But the reality is, we don't actually do a lot that doesn't work at all in the lead gen call space. It has to have conversion. You have to be able to continue to spend money on it quarter over quarter. So the other thing that kind of concerning here is like it works. People pick up the phone. They do the deal with that person calling them 17 times or 13 times or whatever the horror stories are that we hear. So MBA went to bat and legislation would be required to make this a single call or, one-to-one relationship, is how I should actually say it rather than single call. It's a single relationship with the individual has the permission to call you. But so good for them getting it through the House or getting it to the point that it's part of the way there, which is farther than it's been yet. At the same time, and I want to bring up more complexity around this as we peel back the onion. Do we really think it's going to stop, even though it may stop in the exact form we're describing? And the form we're
Mhm.
describing is there's a credit pool, it's mortgage related or debt related credit pool. The lead goes out to the 5 or 6 buyers of that, maybe more, and they all call. What I'm saying is there's still going to be flags, triggers, indicators, whatever you want to call them, that get sold amongst real estate and mortgage to generate activity. So why are we this worried about it? And I guess those are my two questions. Like, are we truly solving a problem that's going to change lead gen in this industry for lender servicers, for customers? And or are we really focused on the wrong thing because we're getting better and better about indicators and propensity and the flags that we need to use to call leads? So aren't we already kind of past it anyway?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't, these things are to me never cut and dry. And though I did get my CMB last year and read a lot and regurgitated a lot, I'm terrible with details. Please don't be mad at me, fellow CMBs. So like I'm not going to remember exactly how the wording is written in the current legislation that's, moving quickly.
Sure.
But I do think, one critical thing is the opt-in versus opt-out, right? And, as a consumer who has been bothered by this, I do actually think that you're going to see more and more push towards consumers being protected, but also having more control over. And in this scenario, I feel like it's like a catch-22, right? Because it's like consumers are only as intelligent as they are within the mortgage space. If I didn't work in mortgage, I wouldn't understand trigger leads to this level, right? But because I do, I get the opt-in versus opt-out. I get that a normal consumer might not have enough knowledge to know that they should be opting in or opting out of accepting this. Like we don't read the fine print. Who reads fine print on anything, right? And so as a general consumer, take out that I'm in this industry, I wouldn't understand the disclosures I'm reading because I don't read them. I just click through and sign. So you don't understand necessarily what you are or you aren't signing up for. So I get the point there in protecting. And I do think, if I remember correctly, I think it is more around like if you have some type of established relationship. So it might not have to be on the current loan, right? Could be previous relationship, et cetera. But nevertheless, I don't know. It's a tough one, Jeremy. I'm curious your thoughts as well. But I do think we've made advancements to make it better. I would say there are definitely offenders that don't play by the rules, and there are definitely consumers that are still frustrated. And I think something needs to change, but people always find loopholes. They always find ways to work around things. So I'm not sure that we're going to see maybe all the changes we want, but I think the intent behind it is good. And I think the adjustments to what has been tried to move forward in the legislation make sense. And
Yeah,
that's
I
coming
think
from somebody that sells verification data. So,
I think before we move on to the next topic, I guess I'll conclude it this way, which is I think that it's taking up a lot of time, effort, and energy that is not going to result in
that's true.
that much more of an advantage to the lender and servicer, because if nothing much else changes but that, you're still not solving for what you and I talk about all the time on this show, which is you actually need to have value. The reason you call needs to be valuable, and it can't just
Hmm.
be the same as everything
Yeah.
else that someone might see online or that someone is getting in other phone calls. And so to me, the worst offenders meaning that complain about this are ones that aren't making a difference to their customer when they do call them. And it's easy to
Yep.
poach that customer because
Absolutely.
they have no tie to the value you added, whether it was 1 year ago, 3 years ago, the, the day before. It's like, oh, I don't really care. And I think the more I've been talking to people, this is a topic that kind of infiltrates everything we're going to talk about today, but also everything we've been talking about, which is
Yeah.
when you're in a commodity business and you're selling other people's money, you have to do it in a way that adds some component to the service, to the experience, to the context, to the education, to the expertise that you bring to the table that isn't readily available by everyone else. And so I've been struggling with that. Who's doing it
Yep.
well, who's not, how to advise my clients on what is your specific thing here that you're doing,
Yep.
and trying to really ask for that. One of the first interviews I did for Now Next Later here on the Crispin Commentary was with Brian View. And my question to him was like, as a lender, you have to have a belief. You have to believe in some strategy about your company. And I think
Hmm.
often over the years, and this year in particular, I'm still not hearing conviction on here's what our company's about. Here's what our company does that's different. I'm hearing a lot of here's how we do what they do, whoever the they is. It may be Rocket, it may be another servicer, it may be another distributed retail lender down the street. And so there's a lot of sharing of best practices and collaboration going on, which I appreciate, but I also don't see a ton of conviction around we think our company's different and here's how. We see some of it. But I expect to see more of it in this space in particular. Now, nobody's going to say, go ahead and call my customers because I'm going to hold on to them. Nobody's going to say that. But that's kind of the attitude you have to have inside of the products you build and inside of the experience you offer. And I just don't get a strong sense of that from enough companies, I guess, is my thought there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And I would say, of the sessions I did attend, those that were on stage speaking on behalf of companies that I think are actually thinking about it in the right ways, and not just from a trigger lead perspective, but across the board dealing with all of the advancements and uncertainties in our market. It's the people that are playing offense, not defense, that are winning.
That's right.
And I know it's hard, and I'm not, a small independent mortgage banker. So I don't understand the pains firsthand, but I talk to many of them, and I can understand how when you're in a survival mode, it might feel really hard to play offense, but truly you have to find a way, right? The
Hmm.
ones that are playing chess right now are the ones that are going to win, not the ones playing checkers. You can't just be hopping and skipping over things. You need to be thinking strategically, even if the strategic thought might be painful to swallow, right?
Right.
But if you don't get ahead of it, I mean, we heard a lot of people say we're going to continue to see more consolidation. And so, I think you've got to be playing offense. You've got to be thinking strategically, and you've got to be creative in that strategic thought on how you're managing across all areas, and be willing to look at scenario planning from the worst case scenario to the best. Because if the worst case scenario becomes your reality, wouldn't you want control over it at least? Right? Wouldn't you want
Hmm.
to turn it, spin it into the best possible scenario? And not just for you as a lender, but also for your consumers, because we're going to see more change. We're going to see more consolidation, contraction, and I think we need to be prepared for what that means. I mean, a bill like this, yes, it matters, but in the grand scheme of things, it is to an extent another piece of noise that we just deal with along with everything else. And again, players that are doing well, adding that value you're talking about. I think I saw Jake's comment in the chat around, taking data and using it for the right reasons in the right way. That's not exactly what he said. I'm taking it and turning it into something even better. But I think those are the ones that you're going to see leading the pack, and not just staying alive, but really driving where we're headed as an industry forward.
Yeah, let's use that as our segue because that is a perfect segue. As for those that watch the show regularly, we kind of move now through the show into the next and the later. And you mentioned consolidation. It was something I thought a lot about over the last few years. And the reason was we kept hearing a very specific type of consolidation. I thought
Mhm.
we kept hearing there's going to be strain on the mid-market and smaller players, and they're going to get gobbled up. And to me, it meant two things, or at least it's widely understood to be two things. The number of logos in our industry is going down. There'll be mortgage companies that close, and the number of LO licenses in our industry will go down. Similar with real estate licenses. There's going to be just consolidation to teams and big logos, and the number of licenses will get cut in half. We've heard this a lot, and we've heard it for years. And it hasn't really happened. This, in a good way, this industry is stubbornly fragmented, is resilient in its fragmentation, in its local focus. And so I started to form a different theory over the last couple of weeks. And it was reinforced with some of the issues you just talked about with data and AI that I've been hearing. And so I'll give you my consolidation theory and let you react to it. We're actually going to not see half the companies in this industry go away. I think we're going to see all of the companies in this industry get half as big. So by headcount. And so what I mean by that is those mid-sized logos and those small logos, some will choose an M&A type of strategy, I'm sure, naturally. But I think a lot more than we've anticipated in the past few years will actually end up losing the bottom 50% performers in their teams. And that is sales as well as everything else. So in other words, the company remains, the logo remains, and in fact, maybe profitability remains or increases because all of the leads and all of the tools and all of the activity are going to flow up to the top performers, to those who are efficient within the organization. And service providers, tech companies, AI companies and lenders are serving their best and brightest. And so as a result, we won't actually see this culling of the herd the way it's been described to me over the last, however many years. What we'll end up seeing is we now have the capability, and I'm pretty sure we can say now, even though I'm putting this in the next category, to apply a couple of different categories of tools to our companies, and everybody's going to get smaller but do more.
I'm marinating on this one. I mean, so I don't think I disagree or agree. I think I'm somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
Where I would say I disagree is, I mean, we definitely saw at least 50% or if not more, and terrible at the details, decline in IMBs. So like you can't say that we haven't seen the consolidation. It's already happened. Will we see a continued cut at that level? Maybe, maybe not. I think there will be some, to your point, the bigger companies will, do some M&A work. I don't know. I struggle with this performance piece because I think about, the infamous quote that's out there, and I can't remember who coined it, but like the concept of, a CFO and a CEO having a conversation, and the CEO or CFO is like, what happens if we spend all this money on our employees and we invest in them and then they leave? And the CEO is like, what happens if we don't and they stay? Right. And so
Yeah.
I still, I guess, am tainted by this idea that, low performers will cling until they don't have to. And I can imagine, from an operating standpoint, you're going to have a very hard decision to make that if you've got low performers staying and you're covering the overhead cost, which is arguably that the highest piece of the puzzle and originating alone is paying for the sales folks, what are you going to do? And I don't envy being in the seat of that person that has to make those decisions. So it's not to say that I don't disagree with your concept of people that are like I mentioned, playing offense, investing in tech, thinking about how to strategically position themselves to add value to consumers and really differentiate from just a general commodity of a mortgage. Yes, they are going to win. And how they do that might be in forward looking rather than, trying to contract. But I do still think we're going to see the market force some of that contraction.
Mhm. Yeah, and that'll, I think, be to your point, mostly at the lender level. Like I do like your clarification that we may have already seen enough of it to qualify.
Yeah.
On the vendor side, did you hear anything or see anything in the last few
Mhm.
weeks, between all of your travels that stood out to you as like, oh, wow, that's the best thing I saw, or that's a different thing I saw? We teased a little bit of some of those rumors or some of those different things. So I have a
Yeah.
couple. I know you have a couple. What have you seen?
Yeah. I won't give specifics. You can give specifics, but I
Okay.
would say thematically, one of the things I have heard, and it goes in a couple different directions that I find really interesting. One is either, mid to big size players that have the means to do it are looking very thoughtfully on what do they build in-house versus what do they outsource, and figuring out, from a core standpoint, okay, if it falls into the lane of this is what we do and this is what we do well, and there are ways that technology can help us and we can build it in-house, let's do that. But for specialty things or things that we're just like, it's not the value that we get out of it isn't worth our time to go build it when somebody else is already doing it and being great. Let's partner. They're going to. So that's one theme that I've heard multiple lenders talk about that's been very interesting, especially when, and we've discussed this before, ones that were more, I'm going to build everything in house, like Rocket once upon a time, are pulling back and strategically thinking about, okay, where does it really make sense for us to stay focused on, building out what we do well versus outsourcing? And you're seeing them partner more. And then some other ones that were used to building stuff in house, I'm sorry, used to insourcing in, good Lord, can I talk today? This head cold is following me from Housing Mart. It's ruining my life. Those who are outsourcing more are looking at, are there certain things I can build in-house, right? AI is, becoming more prominent. We have the ability to be smarter about how we're building things. And you're seeing, I think, lenders start to play. It's very early, but start to play in that world of like, what can I do even in my own shop with technology that could make me more efficient? The other is because AI, piggybacking on that, is moving so fast and it's becoming widely adopted in other industries, it's moving faster than our core systems can keep up with. And so what I once thought would be a very hard barrier to entry with POS and LOS companies coming into play, I am now seeing take a hold and actually start to make progress because these newer ones are built for AI or they're
Hmm.
built with AI. And so, when you think about, so Mike called one out. Yes, Vestas want them. But when you think about it, like truly, and it's, we have partnerships with all, so I'm going to keep it agnostic and not name names. But when you think about LOSs that have been around for a really long time, it's hard to introduce any kind of change, let alone think about how AI is going to come into the fold. It's not impossible, but it's challenging. So you're starting to see this like once upon a time, newer LOSs were really struggling to gain any type of hold. And now all of a sudden, you've got a disruptor like AI coming in, and you're starting to see those scales shift a little. And I think there's real competition now in play, and it's not, a foregone conclusion, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I'm really interested to see some of these newer players in the market that are starting to make inroads in the LOS and POS and other spaces that, again, either built with AI or built for like, having AI in mind, what they can do and how far and how fast they'll go.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. One of my trends that I recognize was exactly the same thing, which is lenders identifying what they don't believe is that much of a differentiator. So I'll go buy it because
Yep.
and the example I heard the most over the last few weeks was voice AI. So voice
Mhm.
AI making outbound calls. I don't necessarily think I'm not one who is imagining a AI agent taking a full application. Just for right now, I don't know that customers are crying out for that. I don't know that customers need it, and I don't see it lowering the cost enough. If somebody were to pass off that cost to the consumer's bottom line, I think their loan estimate will look pretty good, and maybe somebody will try it for that reason. But what I did hear was what we used to see at Rocket was a third party connector. They would make the call, they would sit through the rings. As soon as they got somebody on the phone, let me get you in touch with a mortgage banker as quickly as possible. And I see AI being a really nice fit for that. That's what voice AI can do. And that's what we're seeing it do. But nobody was looking at that as a differentiator. Everybody's looking at that as like, I'll just buy it from whomever's embedded. And then that leads to my second point, which is the point you were making, which is the more critical one. I'm going to access a lot of this through my embedded partners already, my CRM, my LOS, my other core processes or core partners that I want to get my AI through them because I actually don't think that it's that big of a deal to build it myself. Now, I may want my own instance, of course. We may need to have guardrails around this instance is dedicated to this lender and this instance is dedicated to this lender, obviously. But the actual function, tasks, different things, I'm just going to get them. I'm just going to get them through my CRM. I'm just going to get them through my OS. And by the way, a couple people mentioned, fewer than mentioned the voice AI thing, but some even mentioned,
Mhm.
uh, and by the way, I might want to subscribe to 2 or 3 different AI instances, and it's going to be a lot cheaper to
Mhm.
do that through somebody else than myself. Like every lender is not going to want to have Claude talking to Chat GPT to refine the task. They're going to want somebody else to provide that for them. And so AI seems good at that refinement, but not every lender is going to want that expertise, whether or not we think they should have it or not. And so I think those are examples I heard. And then I also think we'll see a lot of jockeying as a result. You mentioned that space of POS, LOS. I'm bringing CRM into it because I think they're all trying to incorporate the point of sale into one of their systems. I actually think the point of sale is essentially over. And what I mean by that is it's just going to get consumed. I mean, I'm sure the folks at Blend are furious with me for saying that, but I I just think it's getting consumed by CRM, it's getting consumed by LOS, it's getting consumed by these other systems I'm already using, and it's not that hard to apply, some of that data gathering tools to a system I already have or to a system that's bigger and more important to my business. And so I think that is another trend I saw that I was pretty interested in.
Okay.
So last thing, if you have any takeaways for what I'm calling just like between now and July 4th, is there anything you're thinking about talking about or trying to get in for the next couple weeks here, other than get rid of your cold, obviously?
Yeah, get rid of my head cold. I think a lot of people got sick from the gathering. It was a par for the course of travel. Um, no, I mean, I personally, I'm going on vacation between now and the 4th, so I
Hey, there we
might
go.
hide from the market and the world and come back and see if we actually had a disruption, whether legislative or otherwise, or if things are just still the same.
Well, the one thing you can guarantee in mortgage is there will be a change and there will be something we have to respond to or adapt to within the next 2 to 4 weeks, because that seems like how it's always been, whether, like you said, whether it comes from Washington, D.C., or whether it comes from
Yeah.
somewhere else. So thank you very much. I look forward to next week. We'll be back. We'll publish a couple more guests for the remainder of the month so you can get a little bit of a head start. But always, please reach out to us, email us, put it in the chat, your questions, your comments, and yeah. And we
According to Jake, prediction is the GSEs will be out of conservatorship by the time I get back from vacation. If that happens, I might like go jump out of a plane, and which I
all,
said I would never do. Jake.
all it takes is a presidential tweet and exit could be
Oh
here.
gosh.
So
Oh
we'll
yeah. Yeah,
have to
yeah.
keep an
That'll
eye on
happen
it.
tonight.
Well, have a wonderful break. We'll be talking
Right.
again soon, as always. Thank you everyone for joining. Let us know in the comments as we post this to LinkedIn, as we post it to YouTube. What else do you want to hear? Who else do you want to hear from? And thanks for joining us on this hot topics, rumors, and speculation issue of Now Next Later. Take care, everyone.